All right, hey there, everybody. Thanks for tuning in as we get more people in here. Coming on live on Facebook, we're going to talk a little bit about the severe weather chances as we go into this morning and into the afternoon. And for some areas this morning, it's already been a fairly active day. Go ahead and comment below. Let me know where you're viewing from and if you can hear me okay. Make sure the audio is fine with all this. And I know there's maybe a little humming noise in the background. That's because the computer fan is running, and unfortunately there's no way for me to really get around that. So with that being said, we can go ahead and start talking about what we've got going on. We already have some showers and storms trying to pop up across the area this morning, and that first round that we saw has now cleared on out off towards Mobile and into the Florida Panhandle area. Now we're starting to see more showers and thunderstorms develop. So if you're watching Dave this morning, he spent all morning talking about we're likely going to have two rounds. So we had the round this morning, and now we're dealing with our next round as we go into the late morning into the parts of the afternoon, and then we'll be dry by tonight. But you can see there, we already have some storms popping up. It looks like we have a little boundary south of the lake. Some storms down in the lower Biloxi Marsh areas, down in St. Bernard Parish. But we're also starting to see some stronger storms come into the Gulf of Mexico and just offshore. And you see there, it's a pretty long band that extends all the way south of Texas, and then it goes all the way up into Terrebonne Parish, right there along the coast, now creeping into our lower Terrebonne Parish. So that's the first area that's likely going to start to see more of the widespread heavy thunderstorms as we go throughout the next hour to 2 hours or so. So you see there, it fetches back. This is our next shortwave little system moving in, and that's why we're thinking we're going to have some possible severe thunderstorms as we go throughout this afternoon. These are some pretty intense storms, I will say. They're moving to the northeast very quickly, about 60 to 65 miles per hour, and you can see there that will eventually take them into the Morgan City area, maybe up towards Homa, Galliano, into Terrebonne Parish, really, as these continue to feed in from the southeast. And these are going to produce a lot of lightning, very heavy rainfall, and we'll have to watch out for high winds, hail, and maybe even a few isolated tornadoes with some of these stronger storms. So that's what we'll be watching this morning as this continues to creep up. And as that piece of energy continues to get closer and closer to southeast Louisiana, we'll likely start to see more thunderstorms pop up across the area. And that's why we do have that severe weather risk as we go throughout the afternoon. Now, here's a look at the severe weather threat. It's not the highest we've ever seen, I'll tell you that, but it is a threat, and we need to take it seriously and make sure we're paying attention and staying weather aware. But as you can see here, we're under a slight threat. That's a level 2 out of 5, all of southeast Louisiana and all of south Mississippi. It decreases, though, pretty dramatically as you go past Baton Rouge. Really not expecting much in the way of strong storms over there. But here in Louisiana, or southeast Louisiana, we could see high winds over 60 miles per hour with those strongest storms. Maybe even some pretty big hail today. That's something we don't typically see, but could see up to golf ball with some of those stronger storms. And then the tornado potential, it's low, but it's not zero. The highest tornado potential today is going to be off to our east, right along the coastal areas over in Florida, going up into Georgia. And that's where we have the better ingredients for some stronger tornadoes as well. That's not to say we couldn't see a few tornadoes today. It's just our best ingredients are off to the east. But regardless, the threat is there for everyone. Make sure you're staying weather aware. Make sure you have, things to alert you. You can download our WWL-TV app. Turn the alerts on. That's the important part. And then, of course, it'll notify you if any storms are moving on in, if they're severe. So that's what we're looking at right now. We do have storms, as I mentioned. If you're just tuning in, watching this line of intense thunderstorms off the coast, it's going to continue to make its way in, and we'll likely start to see a few storms develop as this piece of energy becomes closer and closer. And if you notice, I mentioned a boundary. It's very obvious. You've got this line of storms developing from Mobile, just off the coast, down towards Horn Island, Cat Island, down off the lower parishes. And then you've got this fetch of, stronger storms moving in from the Gulf of Mexico. This is going to be moving into Homa, probably towards Thibodaux, Raceland, that area as we go throughout the next couple of hours. And these are going to be pretty intense. So the severe weather threat will be increasing over the next couple of hours into the early afternoon. Now, I just mentioned all the threats with hail, high winds, tornadoes. Something else we'll have to watch today. There is some moisture up there for these to work with. And we'll have to watch for the flooding threat, especially in those areas that don't see or that have poor drainage. We all know where those are. Maybe some street flooding in those low-lying areas if you get trapped under one of these storms. So just something we'll have to watch. But just know we could see some locally heavy rainfall as we go throughout the late morning and early afternoon. We don't expect widespread flooding, meaning a lot of areas aren't going to pick up a lot of rain, but localized areas are probably going to see a little bit of heavy rainfall. Good morning, everyone joining in. I'm trying to read all the comments. Someone asked, how bad are storms in Avita Springs? We have that low threat, that slight threat level 2 out of 5, which just means we could see high winds, hail, maybe a few tornadoes. So a fairly typical severe weather threat, but you have to take them serious. And we already saw that first round this morning. So that's what we're dealing with out there right now. And there's once again a look at kind of that threat area as we go throughout the late morning into the afternoon hours. Here's a look at a few models to give you an idea. This model did a pretty good job last night, actually. This morning it's struggling a little bit, but it's still handling the kind of situation, kind of what we're seeing, except it doesn't have that line of storms moving into the coastal areas, Terrebonne Parish, this morning. So this model probably not handling that feature very well, but it is popping up those storms a little bit closer to South Mississippi through the afternoon hours. And notice there's a lot of pink and purple in there, so these could be quite intense with some large hail and gusty winds. Now, as we go into the late afternoon hours, still the chance for some showers and storms, but they will start to wind down late afternoon, and then by tonight will be dry, and it looks like by Friday and most of the weekend looking pretty decent weather-wise, so no big weather issues there once we get past today. The other high-resolution model, the RPM, we show this on there a lot. You can see there, it does kind of identify that line of storms, that band kind of developing from Mobile down into the Gulf of Mexico. So that's doing a pretty good job, maybe a little bit more believable. And as we go into the afternoon, notice pulling in more clusters of storms, developing as we get more of that daytime heating. We have plenty of instability. And you can see there those stronger storms developing really south of the lake early in the afternoon. And that's probably where the most intense storms will be as well. It's kind of closer to that boundary. But by the late afternoon, maybe just a few showers and storms lingering, even on the North Shore. So possibly some rainfall in and out as we go throughout today. Now, and then that one shows by tonight we do clear out as well. So really, not everyone is going to see intense thunderstorms this afternoon. The severe weather threat is not high, but it's there. So also, let's touch on this morning. We've been up, it was an early start today because we had that line of storms move through this morning, and it was pretty intense for some areas. Now, we didn't see any of it here south of the lake. That's great. We don't need the severe weather. But you can see all these storm reports. This is from this morning and even going into last night. And these are all preliminaries. So what you've got some hail reports towards Baton Rouge. You've got wind reports. So anywhere you see these little trees sticking up above a house or a roof, those are wind reports. And a lot of these wind reports are possible tornadoes. So this morning at about 3:30, we were watching radar, and it looked like there was a confirmed radar tornado moving from Liberty to Macomb. So the National Weather Service will be investigating that, and then we'll wait for them to, give it the ruling. And so possible tornado in Macomb this morning. Over in George County, Mississippi, that's north of Biloxi right here. That area likely saw a little tornado. At least the radar looked like it was indicating a tornado. But they had a lot of wind damage, even some flash flooding in George County. Stone County had a tornado warning. I haven't heard any damage out of Stone County. And then, of course, we had that long track supercell tornado all the way from Texas up through Alexandria. And then it moved into southwest Mississippi and dissipated as it moved on the other side of the front. So that's what we had this morning, and it was fairly rough. Fortunately, most of our area, it was kind of weird. It weakened as it moved into southeast Louisiana, and then it picked back up in strength as it moved towards South Mississippi. So a unique situation, but nonetheless, some areas had some pretty rough weather this morning. So everyone's asking on the timeline. It goes from about now through the early afternoon. A lot of the area right now is going to be south of the lake, but by this afternoon we might start to see a few more storms pop up north of the lake. But you can see there some pretty intense thunderstorms now moving right on shore in Terrebonne Parish. These are going to continue to move up towards Houma, Chauvin, eventually up into Lafourche, and then up towards the New Orleans area more than likely. And we'll have to keep a close eye on some heavy rainfall along with these. Now, I mentioned earlier, these things are pretty electric, pretty strong storms. You see all the lightning in these storms that are just offshore. And let me switch to a better radar. There we go. But yeah, these things got a lot of lightning in them, which means they're healthy storms, especially this little cluster right here that's south of New Iberia, in that area. And we can actually see how much lightning these have in them. So that whole cluster, about 870, which is, a lot of lightning. So these are going to get pretty noisy as they move on shore as well. And don't be surprised if we have some severe thunderstorm warnings this afternoon. Excuse me. Now, that tornado watch this morning has since expired. We could have another watch issued later this morning into the afternoon. We'll have to wait and see. I don't think the Storm Prediction Center has mentioned anything just yet. So the National Weather Service, they're talking about this line of storms that's developing along this kind of boundary from Mobile down to Terrebonne Parish. You can see the line there, and it is starting to fill in a little bit better. They said a radar indicated strong storms were located on a line extending from 26 miles east of Dulac to 56 miles south of Freshwater City. Movement was east at about 55 miles per hour. So these things are booking it. Winds in excess of 40 miles per hour are possible with these storms. So right now they're mainly a wind threat, some gusty winds. But later this morning into the afternoon, they'll probably start to develop more of a hail threat, and then maybe even a spin-up tornado threat as well. I mentioned the best ingredients for tornadoes are going to be where we have a lot more wind shear, and that's going to be more so to our east. However, with these boundaries in the area, we've got multiple boundaries in the area, and if we can get, boundaries developing off the lakes, the coastal areas, some sea breeze, lake breezes, things like that, we could have some other areas we might have to watch for spin-up tornadoes. But that's just something you kind of have to watch as it's happening. But just know that potential is certainly there. Someone asked, heading to River Ridge for work, when is it supposed to be bad? Really, if it's going to be bad, if we're going to see the storms, more so early afternoon is what it's looking like for most places, except for it'll start a little bit early there along the coast. So earlier now along the coastal areas, and it'll kind of spread up over the area as we go into the early afternoon. Late afternoon, still some storms, and then it starts to quieten down as we go late afternoon into the evening. So this is at round 2 that Dave was talking about all morning on air if you were watching. So yeah, that's what we've got going on. We've got the strong storm starting to move on shore here. Pretty intense thunderstorms. We'll be keeping a close eye on this, of course. I'm not in studio just because we're still practicing social distancing, but we do have Dave in studio. He will be the one, of course, if we have any significant weather happen, he'll be the one that breaks in on air. We'll be updating social media, and then Chris will be in this afternoon. And the reason we're on in studio for this is because it's just so important that we're there, because too many things can go wrong when we do these broadcasts from home, and we don't need that happening when there's severe weather in the area. So possibly looking at our hail tracker, maybe starting to get a little bit of a hail core in some of these offshore storms that are a little bit more stronger. Getting up into those blues, that's when you start to see some quarter-size hail, so that is severe weather criteria. And then we'll just have to see if these can maintain, but that's, our main threats, I think, are going to be high winds and hail this afternoon with a few spin-up tornadoes. Someone said, looks like getting ready to rain in Bogalusa. Y'all had some pretty strong storms this morning, that's for sure, before sunrise. Not seeing much in Bogalusa. Now, there is a thin band of light showers trying to develop from Baton Rouge, Amite, up towards Tylertown, Mississippi. We'll have to see if that little band can maybe try to flare up a little bit as we get this shortwave energy moving in from the Gulf of Mexico. That's what's helping enhance these storms. So we've got a frontal boundary, we've got a shortwave energy, we've got multiple boundaries, we've got a lot of warm, humid air. So we have some ingredients for some strong storms today. So that's why you just need to be weather aware. But a little bit of a break right now, but it will pick back up later on this morning into the afternoon. Someone said, well, no fishing today. Probably not. There's going to be quite a bit of lightning in some of these storms. You know how dicey that can be. Also, the winds are pretty breezy today. Let me see if I can pull up the winds here. Because we've got a low pressure to the north, which is just, a recipe for some breezy winds. And we have a small craft advisory. Here we go. So your winds are undoubtedly going to be breezy. And notice 22 miles per hour out of the southwest gusting at Slidell. So that's something interesting. Also something interesting, when we look at forecasting maybe tornadoes, we're very much interested in the wind direction, right? So you want the winds to change with height. Usually for, a good tornado setup, you want winds out of the southeast, and then you want winds turning clockwise with height, right? So veering. And that means you want winds turning more out of the west as you go up into the atmosphere. So think your winds out of the southeast and they switch out of the west, and you get all that wind shear, right? That helps these storms spin. But when you get winds more kind of out of the same direction, it can be harder for tornadoes to develop. And you still get a high wind threat and you get a hail threat, but maybe not so much a tornado threat. So that's why it's not as high today. Our winds aren't perfect for that. That's better off towards the east. But, as I mentioned, we have these boundaries that can kind of complicate the forecast. So if we get one of these storms to kind of latch onto a boundary somewhere and the winds are just right, we'll have to keep a close eye for some spin up, for some storms to start spinning. But yeah, a breezy afternoon, and even if there weren't storms, it'd be a pretty rough day out on the water if you were going to go out for fishing. Watching from Coketree. Yeah, y'all might start to get some storms fairly soon. They're off to your west right now if you're south of Galliano towards Port Fourchon. You've got these strong storms that are going to be moving up towards Terrebonne, lower Terrebonne Parish right now. We've got one little shower popping up south of Lafitte, or right on Lafitte, really. Let's see if it has any lightning in it. Not any lightning yet, but this will likely get a little bit stronger over the next couple of minutes, or 10 to 15 minutes or so. And then some stronger storms off the Biloxi Marsh, going into the Sounds, going up towards South Mississippi, off Cat Island, Horn Island, Petty Boy Island. And so most of the rain to the south right now. So that's what we've got going on. As I mentioned, the best chance for storms is going to be from right now going into the afternoon, probably more so the early afternoon for areas closer to New Orleans. We'll be keeping a close eye on it, of course. You want to stay weather aware. As I mentioned, you have your weather radio, your phone will alert you, things like that. Mainly a high wind hail event if we do get any of these strong storms, and then maybe even a few tornadoes as well. Flash flooding threat, we're not expecting widespread flash flooding, but if any of these storms kind of train over the same spots, we could have some localized flash flooding, so that's something we'll be paying attention to too. So I just want to thank everyone so much for joining in for this little update. Of course, we'll bring you more updates if we get them. Dave will be on air with any breaking weather news. If we have any tornado warnings, things like that, we'll be in studio. And I'll be watching it from home. But everyone stay safe today. Stay weather aware. While it might be one of those low-end days, we've had some pretty significant weather on days where we aren't expecting much. And then we've had no significant weather on days where maybe we do expect quite a bit. So that's just how it goes down here in southeast Louisiana and south Mississippi. Forecasting, it can be difficult sometimes. So everyone have a safe day. Everyone enjoy their day as well. And of course, we'll see you back on air on Channel 4 at noon with more updates. See you, everybody.